All right, welcome back on the second part of this video. We talked about very basic vessel anatomy. We talked about tunica externa, media interna, arteries, veins, conducting arteries, distributing arteries, arterioles, venules, veins, capillary beds. All right, aneurysm, circle of Willis, carotid sinus, carotid sinus, carotid body. Three capillary types: continuous, fenestrated, and sinusoid, or discontinuous capillaries. Now we're going to talk about what the hell venous valves are. So it's good to know. Give me a second. That the venous valves, they actually prevent the backflow of the blood. Okay, and in parentheses, I'm going to put what you heard from the professor, and it's that the tunica interna, okay, tunica interna forms the venous valves. Now, the other thing that we heard was, well, what are varicose veins? Okay, give me 1 second. So it says here, yes, absolutely. Abnormally swollen twisted veins with defective valves, most often seen in the legs. Absolutely. So if you look at your veins, okay, your veins right here in blue, if you see my mouse, the tunica interna creates valves. And remember the drawing that the professor put on the board. If one valve isn't working, then the valve on top, the valve superior, or the valve inferior, has to pick up the slack of the valve that's not working because the blood volume within that space now falls on a different valve. So if you're looking at three valves, valve number 1, 2, and 3, or if you're looking at a hallway with three different doors, if one of those doors, let's say the door in the middle, door number 2, if door number 2 doesn't work, you're looking at a backflow. You're looking at door number 3 or 1 picking up slack. So in the case of a vein, let me see if I can go to the drawing without this crashing. Varicose veins. Okay, so let's look at this. So right now we have this drawing right here. Let's make believe, and this is not how it is. This is not how it is. But let's make believe that every single open space here has a valve. Right here between the inferior vena cava and like right here, this spot right here, let's just say that that has a valve. And let's say that this open space over here has a valve. And here has a valve. But there are a lot of valves in between. Okay, but let's just make believe that those open spaces are valves. Blood, the direction of blood is superior, right? It's going up, right, against gravity. If this valve fails, right there, the blood in this tube right here, you see my mouse right here, the blood here, the volume of blood here is no longer being held by this valve right here where my mouse is. So now the blood from up there falls right here. So this little valve is now holding this volume right here and this volume right here, which in fact will make the entire section bulge. But that doesn't happen to that big of a scale. It actually happens in very, very, very small scale right here. So there's a lot of valves right here lining these veins, lining these venules, lining these veins. A lot of valves. And when one valve doesn't work, the other ones below it have to pick up the slack because they're actually, pretty much against gravity. So that's varicose veins for you. That's slide 20-31 for those following with me. The venous sinuses, you do need to know what a venous sinus is. Okay. Reservoirs of venous blood. We didn't go too deep with them. Okay. We know the coronary, okay? We know the coronary sinus and the dural venous sinus. But for the dural venous sinus, Give me 1 second. You know what that is. The superior sagittal sinus. Main, drain. I'm actually even... screw that. We already know what that is. Okay. Hemorrhoids. What is a hemorrhoid? Swollen, twisted varicose veins in the rectal region. So it's varicose veins in your anus. Okay. What about the circulatory routes? We went over the circulatory routes. Okay, but let's see what they look like. Right here. You have the simplest way. A, you have your input right here on the right hand side. Then you have your output on the left hand side. Very easy. You have your arterial, goes into a met arterial, then it goes into a throwaway channel, then a venial, then vein, then venual, then venial, then vein, then your inferior vena cava. Your portal system has two capillary beds. So you have one right here and you have one right here. So you have your red blood cell coming here with oxygen, goes into a met arterial, meets with a throwaway channel, then a venial right here. This is still pretty much, oh, hold on. This is a throwaway channel. So you're looking at a med arterial. Then you have your capillary bed right here. This is oxygen leaving the cell, leaving the red blood cell, going into a cell that needs oxygen. The cell that has carbon dioxide dumps it into the red blood cell. And the red blood cell now, through the throwaway channel and the venial, goes up to the heart. The anastomosis with the shunt is just one capillary bed, as you see here, very simple. And then you're looking at the red blood cell going into and having an option. Do I go through the capillary bed or do I go through this route here that does not have one? Okay, so your body can actually choose here with the shunt and decide, okay, well, do I need oxygen here now or should I just use it somewhere else? Which is pretty good. Your venous anastomosis, arterial anastomosis, they're just different routes, all right? Your red blood cells, they actually can have different routes. And it's very important because if you have an embolus, if you have like a clot right here where my mouse is, your blood coming down here doesn't necessarily have to just block right here. It'll hit this dead end, but it could always just go down here, south, and then make a left and go into this capillary bed. So if there's a clot anywhere here, they have different routes that they can take, which is pretty sweet. Same thing happens right here with the vein, with the venous anastomosis. There are different routes that the blood can take to reach your destination. On the slides, we were looking at portal systems, anastomosis, arteriovenous anastomosis are shunts. So I'm going to go ahead and make some slides about that. So I'm going to put here portal system. Blood flows through two consecutive capillary networks before it turns to the heart. And that's what we saw right here, your portal system. Now we're going to, because the simple one is it's just really simple. So the anastomosis, which is going to be on a quiz. Remember he said that. The anastomosis, surgical joining of two duct vessels of bowel segments to allow flow from one to another. All right. But what he has, and I'm going to put it in capital. Okay. I'm going to put it here, alternative route that blood can take. Okay. So that's that. And we should continue with arteriovenous. Sorry. That's right. Direct connection between arterial and venial. Okay. But this is a good one. Shunt. Artery flows directly into vein, bypassing capillaries. So this is what you have to know. Very important. You're bypassing the capillary with an arterial venous anastomosis. Venous anastomosis. Okay. Very abundant interconnection of more than one vein draining the same tissue area. This is the most common one. Okay, so I'm going to put here in parentheses, most common. All right. And one vein empties directly into another. Very good. You should know that. Now, blood pressure. Blood pressure was one of the last segments that we talked about. We talked about hemodynamics. We know what blood pressure is. So blood pressure. So it's the pressure that exerted by the blood against the walls of the blood vessels. Plain and simple. We know systolic pressure. Okay, blood pressure in the arteries during contraction of the ventricles. And we know diastolic pressure. And it's the blood pressure related between the heart contractions. This one's very important. Occurs when the ventricles are relaxed. The lowest pressure against the walls of an artery. Yeah. So you have to know that it's the lowest. And I'm going to put this in capital. In caps. All right. So we should talk about pulse pressure. Pulse pressure, difference between systolic and diastolic, very important. We don't need to know mean arterial pressure or map. We do not need to know that. We do need to know, for now anyway, we do need to know what hypertension is. Okay. It's abnormally high blood pressure while at rest. All right. We should also know our blood pressure is determined by cardiac output, blood volume, and peripheral resistance. Okay. So I'm going to put here, what is our blood pressure determined by? And I'm going to put here cardiac output, comma, blood volume, comma, and peripheral resistance. There you go. Now, we should know that the resistance hinges on blood viscosity, vessel length, and vessel radius. So I'm going to put here, what does the resistance hinge upon? I'm going to put here blood viscosity. I'm going to put here vessel length and vessel radius. And that's that. Let's see. We should note, so blood pressure facts. I'm going to put here that blood in veins is non-pulsatile. And it's at 10. We should also know that, what else about veins or blood pressure? As we age, our BP increases. I'm going to put here, this is natural. Done. So I'm going to end the video right here. We just talked about, what did we talk about? Where did we start? With the anastomoses, the pressure. We didn't do much, but again, today I think we spent more time answering questions than actually learning anything from the slides. So far, we have the basic anatomy of the vessels. We know the receptors in the vessels. We know capillary types, and we were talking about systems, how capillary works. We're going to learn more about that tomorrow. Blood pressure. That's what we touched up. That's what we touched on right now. So vessels, what are they made of? How do they work? And blood pressure. Okay. So I'll see you for the third video.